Whose child is that? One voice whispered, "First class." Another scoffed, "He must be lost." Eli sat still, his small hands folded over a briefcase, the laughter slicing through him sharper than any turbulence. A flight attendant leaned in with a smirk. "Sweetheart, you don't belong up here." But moments later, when the CEO himself stepped onto the plane and stopped, frozen, everything changed. The smiles vanished. The air shifted. And the truth landed harder than the plane ever would. This is the story of the boy they mocked for dressing like success. Where are you watching from? Comment your city below. The morning sun filtered through the glass walls of the airport, painting streaks of gold across the bustling terminal. People hurried by with lattes and luggage, their worlds moving fast, but in the middle of it all stood Eli, a 12-year-old boy in a perfectly pressed navy blue suit. His tie was straight, his shoes polished to a mirror's shine, and his posture carried a quiet confidence that felt unusual for someone his age. He wasn't loud or proud, just calm, collected, and far too composed for the chaos around him. He clutched a small leather briefcase, not a toy or a tablet, and waited patiently near gate 12, to most. He looked out of place, a young black kid dressed like a miniature executive in a world that often underestimated what someone like him could be. His mother, a quiet woman with eyes that held both grace and grit, had ironed that suit the night before. She told him, "Always walk like you belong in every room." He believed her. After all, today's flight wasn't just another trip. It was special. The CEO of the company, whose late father had worked for, was rumored to be on board. Eli didn't know much about the man, but he wanted to make his father proud. As boarding began, a few passengers chuckled softly when they saw him. "Cute outfit," one whispered. A flight attendant passed by, offering a tight smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. To her, it was probably funny. A kid dressed for a board meeting instead of a vacation. But Eli overlooked the judgment around him. He only felt excitement, a simple unballisting, a simple, pure thrill of stepping into a world his father once belonged to. What he didn't know was that before this flight landed, his quiet composure would be tested in ways he'd never imagined. The sky wasn't the only thing about to turn turbulent. Eli walked down the narrow jet bridge, the sound of rolling suitcases echoing behind him. His small hand gripped the briefcase tightly, not out of fear but determination. Inside was a single photo, his father standing beside a tall man in a tailored gray suit, both smiling proudly in front of a corporate jet. The man in the photo was the CEO. Eli had stared at that image 100 times. To him, it wasn't about money or status. It was about legacy, about finishing something his father had never been able to. When he reached his seat, 3A, the whispers began almost immediately. The passengers in first class exchanged amused glances. "That's adorable," one woman murmured. "He thinks he belongs up here." The flight attendant, a tall woman named Clara, with a perfect bun and perfectly measured politeness, approached. Her voice carried a sweetness laced with judgment. "Sweetheart, I think you're in the wrong section. Coach is toward the back." Eli looked up, polite but firm. "No, ma'am. This is my seat." He handed over his ticket without hesitation. She blinked, surprised. The seat number matched. But instead of admitting her mistake, she laughed lightly, shaking her head. "Oh my, someone must have mixed things up. Let's get this sorted out." The people around him chuckled quietly, some smirking, others pretending not to notice. Eli's ears burned, but his posture didn't falter. He remembered his mother's words, "Stand tall, even when they look down." Clara motioned for another attendant, whispering something that made both of them laugh softly. They exchanged looks that said everything. What's a kid like him doing here? Minutes passed. Eli sat still, staring out the window as the engines rumbled awake. Clara returned, leaning closer. "Listen, sweetheart, I know you're probably traveling with someone. Can you tell me who bought this ticket for you?" Eli hesitated. "My father did." Before he passed away, the laughter around him quieted, but only for a moment. Clara's smile tightened again, her voice dripping with condescension. "Oh, I see. Well, that's unfortunate. But we can't have unaccompanied minors in first class without clearance. I'll move you once we take off." Eli said nothing. He just looked down at the photo inside his briefcase, the CEO's arm around his father's pride. His promise. As the plane lifted into the clouds, Clara's tone grew more dismissive. She walked past him, rolling her eyes at another attendant. "Look at that suit. Who dresses a kid like that? He's playing make-believe." Her words weren't loud, but they were sharp enough to cut. Eli felt the sting, but didn't cry. He folded his hands in his lap, trying to focus on the soft hum of the engines. But every time she passed his row, she found another way to humiliate him. She accidentally skipped his drink order. She corrected the way he sat. She asked if he'd stolen the business magazine he was reading. Passengers began to notice, some with discomfort, others with indifference. No one said a word. When turbulence hit, Clara made another sarcastic remark. "Careful, young man. Don't wrinkle your fancy little suit." The laughter that followed echoed louder than the shaking of the cabin. Eli's throat tightened. For a moment he wished he could disappear, just blend into the crowd like everyone else. But deep down, something more substantial stirred. His father's voice in memory. "Dignity isn't given, son. You carry it even when they try to take it from you." So he straightened his tie, lifted his chin, and stared out into the endless blue. He didn't know that within the next hour, the very man whose name was printed on the company logo, the man in that photo, would step onto the plane, and when he did, the smirks, the laughter, and Clara's confident smile would all disappear. The cabin doors reopened mid-boarding for connecting passengers. Clara straightened her uniform, adjusting her name tag as if preparing for inspection. The murmurs began instantly. Someone important was stepping aboard. A man in his late 50s with silver hair and a commanding presence stepped through the door. His tailored suit spoke of quiet authority, but his eyes sharp. Discerning were what silenced the laughter in an instant. It was Mr. Lawrence, the CEO, the very man in the photograph inside Eli's briefcase. Clara's professional smile returned. "Good afternoon, Mr. Lawrence. An honor to have you on board," she beamed. He nodded politely and began walking down the aisle. But then he stopped. His gaze landed on Eli, that small boy in the Navy suit, sitting perfectly upright. Was the image of his late father. The CEO's expression changed, not just recognition, but something more profound. Emotion, grief, pride. "Eli." His voice softened. The boy stood, unsure. "Sir?" Lawrence's eyes glistened. "You've grown so much. I didn't know you'd be on this flight." Whispers spread like wildfire. Clara froze, confusion flooding her face. You know him, sir?" Mr. Lawrence turned slowly toward her. His tone cut through the cabin air like a steel blade. "Know him. He's family. His father built half of this company." The laughter died. Clara's face drained of color. Every mocking word, every smirk, hung heavy in the air. The boy she'd belittled wasn't a mistake in first class. He was first class. Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. The silence that followed was heavier than any turbulence. Clara's lips parted, but no words came out. Around her, passengers avoided her eyes, suddenly realizing what they had been complicit in. The same people who had laughed now shifted uncomfortably in their seats, pretending to check their phones, pretending they hadn't seen. Mr. Lawrence placed a hand on Eli's shoulder, steady and proud. "Your father would have been proud of you," he said softly. "You're the reason I came today to meet the boy who carries his name forward." Eli stood quietly, the same calm dignity he'd held through the mocking now shining brighter than ever. Clara whispered an apology, voice trembling, but it fell into the kind of silence that forgiveness doesn't fill right away. She knew no training manual could teach her what this moment had. For the rest of the flight, the tone shifted. The same attendants who had dismissed him now rushed to offer comfort. The same passengers who had sneered now watched him with awe. But Eli didn't need their approval. He had something far more powerful truth when the plane landed. Mr. Lawrence walked beside him through the gate, ignoring the curious stares. Cameras caught the image of the CEO with a young boy in a navy blue suit. A moment that would soon spread online with a caption that said everything. The boy they mocked for looking important turned out to be... And as the story reached millions, one question echoed louder than all the noise. Why does it take power to be treated with respect? Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember. Dignity doesn't come from titles, it comes from truth.